So I saw the game theory's Genshin Impact video, and this wasn't supposed to be response, but it got me thinking a lot about Mora and how the game's economy works, how people use their money, and what is special about Mora exactly. So, while this was supposed to just be a video about Mora, it ended up being like parallel to their video, but in a different vein and kind of the opposite. So I guess it is. But I'm just gonna get into my thoughts now. So, first, a lot of people believe that Mora has some special properties. After all, well, we could argue that the cost of alchemy comes from the usage or activating the alchemy table, like some kind of magical vending machine, and the forge is payment to the blacksmith. Leveling or ascending characters and weapons have the same need for Mora without a clear explanation as to why. But realistically, I don't think that things like those have a lore reason. Well, I've definitely looked too far into things in the past. There are some elements that are in the game because it's just that, a game. Just like we have to accept that each character can only do a normal attack, an elemental skill, and an elemental burst because it's a game and there are limitations and rules set to keep the players in line. We have to accept that the game is going to have elements added that caters to it being a game. Like when you try and limit the amount of progression a person can achieve at one time. It's also important to remember what Zhongli said in his first story quest when discussing the first ever Mora. Well, the one historian goes on about the first Mora serving as a catalyst. Zhongli responds by saying, "Mora and money came about simply because they are a convenient measure of a contract's value. The world's first Mora is probably just an ordinary coin created by Rex Lapis. As for its fate, the same as all Mora, I suppose. It was simply spent somewhere." And considering Zhongli is kind of a special expert in the area, I think I'll go with what he said about it. So then, what about the ley lines? They produce Mora just like Rex Lapis could. Obviously, this could be another element of the game that is there just because it's a game. After all, players need a good way to grind out money with how expensive everything gets, and not exactly making bank killing enemies. But considering Albedo enjoys summoning a branch from the trees that we see in domains, we can't exactly consider it non-canon. However, that still doesn't make Mora special. The ley lines outcrop descriptions mention that they keep giving people what they desire, be it fighting experience or money. Therefore, the Blossom of Wealth is probably more of a reaction to the economic system rather than the other way around. In the end, it seems as if there's nothing special about Mora. Its value is completely man-made, just like money in the real world. So, how does everything about Mora work? Now, I will be the first to admit that I have no idea how economics works, or money for that matter, but from what I understand about the history of Mora, it's that Rex Lapis created it to be used in contracts, which makes sense. It doesn't take very long for a number of different societies to switch from bartering or a communal system to using money, and then this quickly spread to a universal currency. It's not quite clear why Liu's currency became the universal one. However, it's interesting to note that while you can buy meat-based foods from Liu, the only place you can actually purchase raw meat is from Springvale. So maybe they made a deal with the other countries to start to get them to use Mora, and then once they had the majority, it just took over. Again, I don't understand money. It's weird in my head. It doesn't make sense. And even if I did months of research, I would never be able to wrap my head around it. So this is probably really off base, but it's the only thing that makes sense to me. But at the end of the day, it did spread, and it became a part of everyday life. So now the only question remaining is, how does one's spending of Mora compare to the way that an NPC would spend or gain Mora? It's obviously different, but how so? Well, for starters, buying food is kind of a ripoff for us, especially in Liu. None of the dishes you can buy are perfect quality, and all of them are obviously more expensive than going out and finding the materials yourself. But for, say, Beatrice, who isn't going out of town to pick up random carrots, heading to Good Hunters or the general goods store makes sense. And this is even more true for Liyue. As previously mentioned, you can't buy raw meat in the city, despite the boars and other animals nearby, which means that they've probably got an import fee on the meats, which makes it a quote-unquote specialty, and so that raises the prices. But since the NPCs don't have to worry about spending about 2 million more to just level level a character up to 90, and that's not even including the Mora needed to get them good weapons or artifacts. The NPCs can afford to splurge on food. They also would seemingly have to pay some kind of tax. After all, Mondstadt has the Knights of Favonius, and Liyue has the Millilith, and both cities need to get money to pay their workers somehow. So then, if people use Mora like we use coins and bill, what is gonna happen now that Mr. Morax has decided to have the most dramatic retirement ever? As anticlimactic as it is, the answer is probably nothing. With the Mora seemingly having no special abilities, there's nothing to stop the Gold House from being able to make Mora themselves. All they'd have to do is make a mold for the coins and choose an appropriate metal. And they even have plenty of time to try and perfect the appearance of the coins, since they have just a few kicking around. Plus, normal everyday NPCs Mora aren't just popping out of existence. And even if that didn't work for some reason, the ley lines are canon. Sure, it would be a change of how the operation works, but I think that they have the time and money to prepare people to go fight some hilly curls on a daily basis to get some. I know that we do it constantly. Therefore, even though Zhongli has made choices, Liyue isn't going to feel any negative repercussions in that way. Just, the trauma of watching their god die, the inevitable instability that comes from a sudden dramatic shift in government, and the potential backlash from whatever the Saritsa plans to do with his gnosis. After all, we may not know for sure what she wants, but one of her agents was just willing to casually destroy the city. But economically, they'll be fine, as will the rest of Tibet, assuming they don't have other things to worry about.